What's going on, people? Welcome back to Football Yannick. This missed me, Anthony's social media post on Instagram saying, but I was the issue, laughing emoji, after Manchester United got, I was going to say knocked out, defeated in the final to Tottenham Hotspur. Apologies, another video on Manchester United, but it is the biggest story, I think, in Premier League football at the moment. Maybe world football? Like, of course, I just uploaded yesterday on the financial ramifications of their loss to Tottenham in the Europa League final. They are in big financial trouble. Everyone seemingly is up for sale. I reflect on that a little bit more in detail, so do consider going to watch that if you're interested. And yes, of course, the final day is coming up this weekend on Sunday. There'll be loads of stories to reflect on. Then there's transfer business and all kinds of big stories around world football that I want to cover. The Club World Cup. Of course, there's always big stories between Barcelona and Real Madrid. So a little gentle reminder, if you think you're interested in that, why not subscribe to this channel? Football Yannick, as always, very, very grateful for your continued support lately. It's been ruddy wicked, mate. Loads and loads of new subscribers. We are, what are we on? 16,754. So road to 17,000 and beyond, man. So thank you for subscribing. So in today's video, I do want to speak about the likes of Anthony, of course, Jadon Sancho, who looks like he will be returning to Manchester United as things stand. Reporters like Ben Jacobs are saying, of course, Chelsea will pay the £5 million penalty to not take up the obligation to buy him, but Chelsea will reflect on that as sort of a loan fee, because there was no loan fee. So they've got the likes of Rashford, Anthony, Sancho, players that they really want to sell. Of course, Garnacho is up for sale. Kobe Mainu, even, Bruno Fernandes is coming out saying things at the end of the final, saying, look, if they want to sell me for cash, whatever, we'll see what happens. Really, Laurie Whitwell, loads of Manchester United journalists for The Athletic have spoken about the financial potential ruin of Manchester United, or that the quotes coming from outside the club is people from outside of the club don't realise how bad the financial situation is. Which brings me to this video topic. Ruben Amarim, yeah. I think he's a good young coach that plays football in a certain way and did very well at Sporting. And of course, many people will say, yes, Sporting is not a top 5 league. The quality of opposition, I heard recently on a different football podcast, I listen to a lot of football podcasts, that the top 3 in the Portuguese league are good. But of course, the quality drop-off after that is quite significant. So you'll be dealing with a good team and coming up against one or two other good teams, managing Sporting, Club de Portugal, but then the rest of the opposition you'll sort of walk over, and then you come to the Premier League, the rest of the opposition is very, very good, and your team isn't a superpower in that league. 1 second, my phone's ringing. So it's a tough job. I do think he's a good manager, though. He was linked to Man City, loosely to Liverpool, Chelsea, West Ham. He ended up going to Manchester United. Now, this is relevant to the finances that I've spoken about, and, Anthony's talk. Of course, Anthony doesn't want to play for them again. Sancho doesn't want to play for them again. And even like boyhood academy graduate Manchester United fan, Rashford doesn't want to play for them again. Which kind of works. Because Anthony, they'll make a huge financial loss on him, even though they'll probably sell him for what is now deemed a significant fee to Real Betis, who could win the Conference League at the expense of my mob. He's been excellent for them since January, and they really want to keep him. They've given him like a new Spanish nickname, but I think it's £40 million is the fee they can buy him for. Of course, he costs double that for Man United, and £40 million for Betis is a lot of money. It is. Maybe if they win the Conference League, they're going to qualify for Europa. Maybe he can be their like marquee signing and they find a way to do it, because it's a big spend for them. Man United would still be making a loss on him. Of course, Sancho cost them £75 million. The obligation for Chelsea is £25 million, which is a third of their purchase price. Rashford is, of course, a pure profit asset. And if they sell him to maybe Barcelona, I think Deco was speaking about him recently, he will, because it'll be really interesting if he's the striker. I know you've got Laporta talking about Haaland, but more realistically, imminently, Rashford down the middle, maybe, flanked by Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. Rashford won't believe his luck, will he, in terms of what he's been dealing with lately? Suddenly he's playing with them, man. He'll be a pure profit asset for pure profit sale. So will Kobbie Mainoo. I'm not entirely sure of Garnacho because they did bring him in from, I believe, Atletico Madrid. So I don't think he's a pure profit academy graduate. There might be something, though, there. Of course, they would have brought him in for very little, and they'll certainly make a big profit on Garnacho because he's a desirable wild card. But the truth is, and the question I want to ask here, is Amarin, his football is so radically different in a 3-4-2-1. Now, I always look through the lens of Chelsea because my club have played a 3-4-3 with Conte, which was like wingers, and then a 3-4-2-1 with Tuchel with inside forwards like Ruben Amarim. But we always had the sort of players for it. Even when Conte first came in, granted he had to sort of mess about with wing-backs, he had to buy a wing-back in Marcus Alonso, and he looked at Victor Moses and went, yeah, we can do this, you know. And of course, after that, you got centre-backs, you've got to destroy a midfield of Kante and Matic. Everything's going to be all right. Let the attackers cook. You've got good attackers. And similarly, we always had a sort of team that could do it, even right up to Tuchel's days. Manchester United simply don't have that. Yeah, they have a team. They have a bad team, already bad team, and this was a reference on the Athletic Football podcast that made me want to talk about it. They have a bad team that can't play this system, so it's really tricky, because if you wanted to just get the best out of them, you'd play like a 4-4-2 counter-attacking football and really narrow the spaces and play like a low, narrow block just to not be terrible. But Man United, their remit to Amarin was bring your football to the Premier League, to Manchester United. We'll build it here. And I said, maybe quite naively, early doors, I think it's a good move, because although personally, I don't think this 3-4-2-1 can win the Premier League anymore. I don't think I do think you need to play some form of controlled 4-3-3, you know, like Man City, like Liverpool. Do you know, that's what I think the landscape dictates. But I do think you can go into a European position club again. You can get out of the banter era and you can put consistent performances in together. Like, you know, like Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, playing back three systems and stuff like that. So I don't think it was a bad idea to get them good again, and then maybe once they're settled and they're out of their banter era and they've got consistent performances and they sort out their finances a little bit, then you can maybe look, do we need to tweak something a bit here to get over the line in terms of the big trophies? But it seems tricky, and they're in such an ominous position now, because this is the real question, and this is the question of the video. In this precarious, disastrous financial situation, do they go all in on Amarin? Because if they risk everything to bring in all the players for this relatively niche at the top level in the Prem 3-4-2-1 and say, right, because like, what has Amarim done for them to go, yeah, you're worth sticking, you know, betting the farm on for you in this situation where we're Donald Ducked? Do you know what I mean? Is he like, you know what, no matter what, because apparently he's getting the backing, you know, and that's what the briefings are from the journalists, that he's not going anywhere. So imagine if they just find a way to stay. They sell Anthony, they sell at losses, Anthony, Sancho, who else? Who else was I talking about? Who's the other winger? Anthony, well, Rashford's not a winger. He's a pure profit asset. So I was going to say, at a loss, the wingers make some money on the academy boys like Mainoo and Rashford. Just so they do it. They do a fire sale. Maybe they even sell Bruno Fernandes to Saudi for 80 plus million pounds, 100 million euros. And because he's, you know, and they bring in like a Rayan Cherki to replace him. Who, of course, you know, I'm not linking him, just say they buy him, and he's, you know, a decade younger, and he's a very awesome, excellent attacking player. Say they do it, so they find a way, they sell all these players, they buy a Cherki, they buy a couple of wing backs, they buy a new centre back, they buy a striker that they desperately need, but all through the lens of these will be able to play Ruben Amarim ball. Has he done enough to say, yeah, he's worth switching the whole fabric of the squad to play this style of football just for you to sack him again and bring in another high-profile manager. So, well, no, I play a back four. I want to play a back four. Do it all again. Rip it up all again. Now, again, this isn't a hit piece on Ruben Amarim because I actually quite like him. I think he did amazing work at Sporting, bringing them back into, turning them into title winners again from a period when they hadn't been, much like Antonio Conte did at Juve, somewhat, And he's very young, of course. He'd only just turned 40. And he looks, I like the cut of his jib. He's very, very honest. He's a good communicator. He's charismatic. And it'll be nice for it to work, And plus, we've done this merry-go-round of the old boys managers. It would just seem like a nice, new, refreshing appointment. But when he took over from Ten Hag, I think Manchester United were like a point off top 5 or something like that. I know they were doing badly and they were in 8th and it was trending negatively. But they've gone from 8th to 16th and it could be 17th by the end of the season. They might not reach 40 points. Your league campaign will always be reflective of how good you are as a team. And yes, they had the vibes moments into the run to the Europa League final, but is it enough to rip up these plug-and-play players for a back four system, which most coaches can come in and go, yeah, I'm going to play some sort of type of four-back system where these players do recurring themes in terms of instruction, because it's a radically different system. I get it. That was the idea, and they didn't say to him, "Oh yeah, just let's get through this season, play a back four, play whatever you got to do to get through the season, and then start coaching in this other system in the summer and yada yada yada." They were like, "No, don't worry if it's gonna get worse before it gets better. Fine, we'll sit through the teething issues, we'll sit through the growing pains, just hammer in as quick as possible, from as early as possible, your philosophy, your football." And it's just not worked, and it's done the opposite. It's like made confidence, really low. You've got this like final lost negativity and all these quotes coming out afterwards. And it really does pose the question, do they hold their nerve? And in this really delicate financial precarious position, do they continue to risk everything on Amarim? Has he done enough to deserve that? I put the question out to you guys. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. We'll try and do some non-Manchester United content to mix it up a little bit. Of course, there's loads of other teams to talk about, but as usual, they're one of the biggest stories in the game. So thank you as always for supporting me. Thank you for liking and subscribing to this channel, Football Therapy, and I do hope to see you. Football Therapy. I was doing so well. Football Yannick. I was doing so well. All right, see you back here soon. Peace.